When I was a preteen, I loved to read V.C. Andrews books. Now, for those of you who don't know who V.C. Andrews is, she is probably most well known for the book Flowers in the Attic. I loved Flowers in the Attic. And if you haven't read the book, you've probably seen the movie. But Flowers in the Attic was like this, it was just this crazy story. I think the books sold like over 40 million copies, pardon me. Anyway, hey Wendy girl. Um, yeah, the story, so if you're not familiar with the Flowers in the Attic story, very brief. It's the story of the Dollenganger family. And the Dollenganger family consisted of four kids and a mom. And so um, these kids were born into this family, and their father dies. And so their mother, who was disinherited by her father, takes her kids back to her wealthy family because now that the father is dead, the family is broke and destitute and they have nowhere to go. Well, anyway, she takes her four children to her father's mansion, and in an effort to get in his good graces, because of some other stuff, you just have to read the book, she and her grandmother, or her mother, devise a plan to act like her four children don't exist. So the grandmother houses the four kids into this one room in this other wing of the mansion, and they just go through all of these horrors and terrors. They're basically starved, they're treated unwell, they're locked in this room. They're slowly being fed rat poisoning in their food. They can't go outside to get fresh sunlight and walk around. They're basically held prisoner in this one room. And when you read the story, or if you've seen the movie, you find that the grandmother is mean. She is mean. She is surly. She's just a hard woman. She is evil as hell. Basically, Beelzebub's little sister. I mean, she is just the worst. Um, and so, what I love about V.C. Andrews' books is because she does a series on the family. And so, in the series, there are 5 books. And so, you read through the story of this family, and then the last book is a prequel. And the prequel usually focuses on the main antagonist of the story. And so, in this case, with Flowers in the Attic, at the end of that series, they released a prequel, they meaning VC Andrews. Hey, Alero. Um, they release a prequel which goes into the story of the grandmother, who is not the grandmother. This is an origin story. And so in the prequel, we get to find out or learn more about this grandmother in Flowers in the Attic and how she became to be this evil woman that we meet in Flowers in the Attic. And what you find is usually in the prequels, the person that we meet in the later on in the story is not who they were when they were young. She was a seemingly normal woman, and she went through a bunch of traumatic experiences, some life events that really broke her down. And slowly but surely, those events hardened her into this evil grandmother that we meet in Flowers in the Attic. And so, fast forward to 2016 when I started my journey of healing. As I've mentioned before, I've had a tumultuous relationship with my mom. It was downright toxic for pretty much my entire life. And I would have to say a turning point in my healing process came when I was able to see my mother as a woman. As I said before, during this time I was in very intense therapy, and I was seeing a life coach, and so I was having all these assignments. I had to do a lot of work. And when I was able to disconnect the role of mother from my mom and just see her as a woman, it was a game changer. As you know, I'm a first generation American, and when I got to see my mother just as a woman, just like me, and try to imagine her growing up in a different time. So, there's a generational gap. And she grew up in a different world than I did. She grew up in another country with a different culture, different customs, different traditions. And my mom didn't become who I experienced overnight. She was a little girl with wonder, and there are things that happened in her life, some that I know about and some that I'm sure I'll never find out about because my mom's very secretive and she'll probably take a lot of those things to the grave. But when I looked at her as just a woman who had dreams, who had aspirations, who fell in love, who got her heart broken, who laughed a lot, who went out with her girls, she was just a woman. There are things that happened to her that slowly eroded her heart and hardened it. And then I meet her at another stage in her life. Everyone has an origin story. And when I was able to use the bits and pieces that I had about my mom's past, it was the first time that I was able to have compassion for her. And like, wow, she experienced things as a woman just like me before she became my mother. She had dreams. She had an idea of what life would be like coming to the United States, the American dream that's really like the American nightmare. Now, me getting to see her as just a woman, it didn't change anything that happened between us. Like that didn't change anything. But it made me have much more compassion for her. It made me feel sorry for her at times. And it gave me some understanding about how she came to be. I'm going to say to you, if you have a family member or an elder or somebody that you are in relationship with where it's difficult dealing with them, it's challenging, might even be toxic too. This is going to take a lot of courage and effort, but I challenge you to be as objective as possible and take yourself out of the equation and look at that person independent of their role or their connection to you. And think about what that person would be if they didn't have that title. Who were they before you met them? Do you have information about their childhood, how they grew up, what their family dynamics were, what type of challenges that they dealt with? And if you don't have a lot, maybe you can go on an unofficial scavenger hunt, ask other family members. Maybe this is your mom. Maybe this is your father. Maybe you don't understand why your father is so hard, why he works so hard, why he's mean. Maybe he's an alcoholic. Everybody has an origin story. People just don't show up into your life mean as hell. They don't. Everybody comes into this world knowing nothing. We know nothing about our past. We don't know anything about the families we come from. Sometimes our families hold secrets that we don't find out about until decades later, but everybody has an origin story. People just don't show up mean and evil the way that they are. And I promise you, if you do that, although it won't change the events that happened in the past, knowing their origin story will give you a little bit more understanding, and it'll produce some compassion in you for them. Now, you're still going to have to govern yourself accordingly and decide if you can deal with this relationship and set some boundaries or move around and just, be gone. But I think if you do that, it'll help. And one day somebody in your life might be investigating your origin story. But my message to you today is, if you're dealing with someone difficult in your life, especially an elder, a mother, a father, grandparent, auntie, uncle, they have an origin story. Everybody just doesn't wake up mean as hell. All right, I'm going to go. That's day 11 of my You versus You challenge. I hope that something that I'm sharing with you, and by my transparency, is challenging you to look in the mirror and do better. If you're not already following me, follow me on Instagram. And if you're watching this on YouTube, definitely hit the subscribe button. Is that Nee? Hey, how are you? What up, though? Hey, Alero. Thanks for joining me. All right, I gotta go. Bye.